So today, really, the webinar is about looking at the technology, when and how and who is using this technology. The questions always arise from different sectors on who's doing what are the benefits of using such technologies. Um, and I think really today is to ask industry experts that are working with blockchain, with distributed ledger technologies, um, what they're busy with, what they've found in the environments that they're working, what challenges they're overcoming, and really it's just really to go through the technology and let people ask the right question. So I think let's do some quick introductions. My position is a postgraduate researcher at the CSIR. We've got Mr. Rohit Tripathy. He's dual based, I'm told, in India and the US, and he's the founder of RanchiMall. So he'll discuss all what he's busy with. We've got Mr. Joseph Fiscella. Sorry for pronunciation. I'm assuming it's an Italian surname. He's in New York, in the US. We had Mr. Dennis Tan. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it today due to family reasons. And then Mr. Chris Becker, who's also sitting in South Africa, in Johannesburg.
Thank you, Neil, for having us on this panel. It's very exciting to talk to the research community of South Africa and the audience that is interested in blockchain through the research community in South Africa. Incidentally, India's research community is also termed as CSIR, which is exactly the same term, which is a network of industrial laboratories spread all over India. So what I thought, in order to explain what blockchain is, I would take you through a sample application to prove a point that blockchain is bigger and wider than you imagine it could be. Whatever you hear, what blockchain can do, you hear about blockchain in supply chain management, you hear about blockchain in fungible tokens, you hear about blockchain in investments. But blockchain is essentially a new form of internet. It has its own rules of internet interactions, and it can subsume anything that you could do normally on internet the normal way, be it a messenger app, be it e-commerce, be it a corporate. Anything that can be done on internet can also be done in blockchain. And those entities on blockchain will be much more powerful than those on internet because there's a value transfer happening all the time, which is not possible in current internet-based technologies. So a lot of innovation today in blockchain is extremely futuristic. When we talk about blockchains doing different kind of new things that we never heard about, for instance, prediction markets. The question that we have to ask is, are ordinary people doing prediction markets today? And unless blockchain touches ordinary people in the present day lives, it will not be relevant. Unfortunately, we are not solving present day problems using the blockchain convincingly. We got to make blockchain relevant to the problems of today in everyday users' life and solve them to the understanding of common and ordinary users. And unless we do that, we will not have a bridge to the future of blockchain. The most common example, the internet, which has changed our lives so much. Internet, because of which people from different countries are participating on this Zoom call. It would never happen if people never had copper cable telephone lines in their home. Because the first internet only happened because people could use modems to use the normal telephone lines and have internet pipe through it. And they could feel and experience internet. And they can see the power of information sharing. And then later broadband internet came. Then the fiber came. And then high-speed links came. But we really needed people to have telephone lines in their home before broadband internet could happen. 5G phones are the latest craze. Apple has just released a 5G compatible phone, iPhone 12Z. But these phones could never have happened if people never learned telephony using the black boxes, the black dial old telephones, because first people have to really know, they have to in mass basis, they have to exchange telephone calls, and they have to see values of exchanging conversation in one-to-one mode, in a decentralized mode. Only then you could go higher in technology curve, and then you could bring 3G, 4G, and 5G phones. Those copper telephone lines and black dial telephones are today the missing piece in the blockchain universe. People have really no way to relate to blockchains. And that relation is very important. In 75th year of Council of Scientific and Industrial Research celebration, we are going to pose a simple question. We basically want to make this conversation about blockchain relevant to everyone in any scenario. And the scenario that I have picked is, can we fund research itself through blockchain means? CSIR has done 75 years of research through government of South Africa, but can you fund all those research through blockchain means, and what would it take to do that? Funding for research projects today is currently done through government agencies, with private individuals and corporations. With the evolution of blockchains and cryptocurrencies, this has changed. A new paradigm of research funding has emerged and is emerging. This paradigm of funding, it provides more individual freedom. At this point of time, your researchers are constrained by the projects which have been allocated and approved by the government, and funding is restricted to a select few, and these are not necessarily market selected. And these are not necessarily individual projects. These are projects which some bureaucrat has decided is good for funding. But on a blockchain-based system, you would have lesser paperwork. You would have lesser administrative hassles to obtain research grants, and also freedom to undertake research, which is more relevant to the real needs and aspirations of the society. Now, that paradigm is funding based on blockchain through a new instrument, which is called blockchain contracts. And it's an instrument which I'm going to talk about is slightly different than smart contracts. And in the group discussions which will follow, we'll dwell on those differences. So in a blockchain contract, you have to have relationship between different entities on the blockchain. And they are not necessarily 100% automated. But every single transaction is on the blockchain. And the rules these transactions will go through will also be on the blockchain. So that gives it the power of transparency and rules-based enforcement. So for a research blockchain contract, who are the key entities? The key entities are research mentors, like these are the advisors and the guides and the PhD guides who are really very high accomplished individuals in the field of research. Now, in present day research, almost universally, these people have to be PhDs. But if research is discovery of new knowledge, why should research be restricted to you having a PhD degree? So in a blockchain-based research contract system, your research mentors could be anyone without a degree, but having a proof of knowledge through the accomplishment either on blockchain or off blockchain, which has been certified by somebody who is himself accomplished on the blockchain. You also have research students who aspire to undertake very high quality research, and they need to be paid a sustenance to be able to pursue this aim. Research is primarily done by students, and those students could be anywhere in the world. Can blockchain bring them together? Now comes the question of who is going to fund it. Well, obviously, it's going to be investors. It's the investors in the research blockchain contract who are going to fund all of those activities. And our job is to create an incentive system in such a way that investors gain, research students find the funding and sustenance to do the research, and mentors are motivated enough and incentivized enough to do a very high quality job of mentoring and advising the students. And in blockchain contracts, we also need administrators who will make sure that these rules are properly followed, properly executed, and he is a human judge. We talked about smart contracts today, where smart contracts are 100% automated. But my claim is, and my argument is, where we could also do blockchain instruments in which an accomplished human being is the ultimate judge. He is the ultimate arbiter of truth. And it will still be better than our present day systems. So first, let's define blockchain contracts. Blockchain contracts are the ability to do human-mediated and enforced contracts purely on blockchain, as simple as that. These are normal contracts which will be put on the blockchain, and the rules are on the blockchain, the execution and the results of the execution is on the blockchain, the data is on the blockchain. Because blockchain gives you permanent data storage, it gives you data immutability. Those are the only properties we need. The research blockchain contract aims to create a win-win system of incentive design for all participants in the contract while achieving financial stability of the blockchain contract. So there are two parts. The first part is everyone has to have a win-win incentive system, every entity that we talked about. And second very important factor is that the whole blockchain contract itself should be financially stable. So I'm going to give a criteria for that financial stability. The financial stability for the research blockchain contract will be achieved if the expenses paid out under the blockchain contract are always lower than the receivables of the blockchain contract. And this is just common sense. If we can design a system where every time we pay for all research expenses is always lower than what the contract itself is gaining from the system, is gaining from the environment, perennially, permanently, we'll achieve the financial stability of the blockchain contract. Now, assuming we could do such a system, we could do a system where you could create a win-win incentive design for all the participants. And you could also make the blockchain contract stable financially so that it would always continue. It would be a running entity. Then we can break the contracts into tokens and sell those tokens into the crypto markets around the world. And that's the beauty. Discovery of market, existence of market, the power of market, which was traditionally available only to very few entities who were privileged, who could do the paperwork, who could do the bureaucracies, who could navigate all the requirements. That power has now been given to everyone in the world through blockchain. Now, why would an investor ever invest? The investor incentive is it comes only if you can guarantee that these tokens would increase in price over time consistently. So that's the tough question, as to how do you make sure that the blockchain contract prices will keep on increasing over time consistently. And the answer is very simple. We need three principles, three basic principles. That's all, just three. The first requirement is that the contract operating expenses are always lower than the receipts from the sale of the original coins. So you make a blockchain contract, you tokenize it, you get some money, you got to make sure that the expenses are always lower than what you raised in the initial round. The second condition is that the supply of original coins must always be lower than the demand for all those coins. And that's how the price increase happens. Price increase happens only because demand of anything is always higher than the supply of it. So you have to constrain supply, And you got to make sure that the supply of the coins, the ownership coins which the investors will invest, you have to have, it has to be always lower than the demand. And you have to have a way to measure the demand, which for which safety rules are there, which for which instruments are there. And the third important criteria is a minimum viable market has to exist for trading of the tokens. The tokens have to trade. They have to go out in the market, and people should be openly able to buy and sell it. If you meet those three conditions, just those three conditions, your blockchain contract will always gain in value. And it will always be stable financially. Now, assuming we could find some research and we could find those research mentors who would float such research projects and also issue guidelines for the research aspirants. And if it gets a lot of recognition in the academic world, the papers get published in reputed conferences, or they really come with some breakthrough innovation which the world recognizes, then the token of the blockchain contract will automatically increase in value because it has got recognition, and recognition is money. So once you establish the safe expense limit for the financial stability of the blockchain contract with those three rules I talked about, we simply have to direct those expenses to our research scholars, research expenses, and mentorship payments if at all required. That completes the incentive design for all entities in the system. And we can fund long-term research, which 10 to 50 years horizon perpetually, which will be longer than what governments can fund. It's very difficult to fund a research initiative going all the way up to 50 years. In blockchain, we can do that. So let me repeat again. This paradigm promises more individual freedom, less paperwork, less administrative hassles to obtain research grants, and freedom to undertake research which is more relevant to the real need and aspirations of the society. And furthermore, this is a present day problem. This is not a future problem. This is a present day problem because research needs funding. A brief background about RanchiMall related to blockchain contracts. A blockchain contract is one of the core product ideas that RanchiMall is working on. And we were hampered by lack of usable blockchain technology for ordinary people. We have Ethereum, we have a lot of blockchain technologies for smart contract, but they are very technical for ordinary people usage. And that hampered us when we started testing it for people around us. So we spent last 3 years solving the usability problem, and we selected the Flow blockchain for this purpose. And we are very pleased to announce that Flow blockchain today is the most usable blockchain among all. It's not widely used because we have not talked widely about it, but it is, I can guarantee you, it is the most usable blockchain among all blockchains that you can see around. And RanchiMall is ready to bring research blockchain contract to reality. These are the details of this article that I talked about. And my contact detail, which will be available to all of you.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Rohit. Yeah, very interesting. I think you highlighted there a couple of things that are interesting for me. The one being, you know, we don't fund research for 10 or 50 years. Myself, I'm on a 2-year very specific contract for postgraduate only. So the question is, well, what happens when my contract comes to an end or the research group, you know, runs out of funding? So I think that's a very, very important point to take away. I think I've just got just kind of 2 questions. The first one, and if anyone else has got a question, we can raise hands and do that afterwards. The first one is a real world problem in South Africa is the problem of corruption, and a lot of government tenders are being awarded to companies, you know, where they don't have the necessary skill set, or they are, you know, family members of government officials, And this is a real world problem, particularly now, also over the coronavirus pandemic, where a lot of PPE tenders, there's such a huge demand for this that simply companies were formed, promises were made, whether the product was actually delivered or not kind of becomes irrelevant at the end of the day. So my question is, do you think blockchain is a viable solution to stop or prohibit corruption? And do you think blockchain, on top of that, can build some kind of reputational system whereby we can't have these fly-by-night companies being awarded multi-million rand or multi-million dollar contracts based on the fact that they simply know someone, rather than their skill set or their what the company's knowledge base actually is. So the question is twofold: is do you think blockchain is a solution to prohibit corruption, and can we build some kind of reputation around these companies using blockchain?
So South Africa is a very unique country in the sense that since the ending of apartheid, there were two distinct classes of people. And when I was driving through South Africa, I could see, I was going through the interior towns of South Africa, in Gauteng province, in Limpopo, Cape Town, all of those provinces. And what I observed was you had the main town, which was almost like a first world country. And it's universal. In every single town of South Africa, I saw that, beautiful, amazing roads, all services available. And just you move forward, then you get ghettos, which were almost third world countries. And that is because of the historical legacy of that South Africa came from. And when South Africa ended apartheid in 1990s, suddenly everyone had one person, one vote. They came in the democratic system. And in every democracy that has evolved, especially the third, where you have two classes of people, some were extremely rich and some were extremely poor. Another country I could point out is Haiti, which has exactly the same problem. Corruption has been a huge factor in the initial years. This happened in India as well. When India got its independence, corruption was a massive problem. And it is leading to a massive drain of massive drain of knowledge in South Africa. And people are leaving South Africa to other world. The most famous example is Elon Musk, who is doing Tesla in US. And this is a temporary phase which will go away in a couple of years. It will sort itself out as the income level of the people increases, and blockchain will have a role to play there. So South Africa has some very unique social circumstances, but the biggest potential, as far as I can see, for blockchains in South Africa is they can simply jumpstart a new economy altogether. It's very difficult to take out corruption from government systems once they are settled, because that culture gets toned into the interactions of all the government officials. So inside the government, it is very, very difficult to change that. But if you can create a new system from scratch, and that new system is fair and equitable, then people will shift from government-controlled economy to a blockchain-controlled economy. And in blockchain, corruption is impossible to do because they're all transparent rules. You have to be meritocratic. So I believe that South Africa will solve its corruption problem. It will solve it when blockchain becomes bigger and becomes a more and more prominent part of economy. And although I do not feel that if you implement a blockchain project in a government contract, it will solve the corruption problem, because if the people on top, if the system, if the people who are driving the system, if there is an incentive for them to be corrupt, then blockchain will also reflect that incentive system. So it has to be a grounds up and a system from scratch. But I'm very, very hopeful that just not in South Africa, but every part of the world, blockchain will bring prosperity and freedom from corruption.
Next in line is Joseph.
So my background is in programming. I'm a programmer. I've been doing it since I was a kid. I think 11 years old was the first time I wrote my own program. I was a teacher and educator. I taught kids computer programming throughout high school. I went to college for computer programming, and when I first graduated, I went into the financial district, New York City. I got a programming job, And that's when I kind of rediscovered Bitcoin. I started 2 Bitcoin companies when I was 24. One was a payment processing company, and the other was a blockchain technology company. One of the things I wanted to touch on, I know we spoke a little bit about research earlier in this conversation. Uh, the thing about research in the blockchain space is that it's like trying to drink from a fire hose. There's so much information and there are so many new things going on every day. If you tried to become even a little bit informed about everything, you wouldn't be informed on anything. There's just too much information and it's too much time. Uh, that is like an unsolved problem in my opinion in the space, because it is such a new and cutting edge thing, and people are doing so many new things with it, that it is just impossible to keep up. And in fact, even like I would say that some of the research companies that exist today, uh, they charge a lot for the information that they put forth, and it's mostly used for investing. And I think that that's a big disservice to the community. I think that there's a lot of improvement that could happen on the research front, in the blockchain space, in the cryptocurrency space, even just on Bitcoin, explaining some of the newer concepts that are coming out with Bitcoin, some of the newer tech that's coming out with Bitcoin. I know Taproot is being pushed forward in the dev community. Um, I know that even some of the financial concepts are new to people, and to communicate those effectively, it really needs like a vast breadth of information to be taken in and digested. And it is not something that's being done right now. It's really like an opportunity, I think, research right now. This all has led to me working at Block Party, where I'm the CTO, and at Block Party, it was originally actually an NFT ticketing company. So we were going to take event ticketing, any type of ticketing that you could have, like online ticketing, real life events. We held a few real life events that were ticketed through our blockchain platform, and those tickets were uh, transferred into an NFT on the ETH blockchain, and that was given sort of like some advantages to the venue, some advantages to the user, uh, but it really wasn't a good way to sort of approach the problem of like transforming value into a chain. And the better way to do that is to make a general protocol. So that's what we've done. We've created this NFT protocol. We have nft.org where you can learn more about it. There's a documentation website. And what we're doing there is, instead of applying NFTs to just tickets, we're applying NFTs to everything that we can. And the first thing that we're doing is creating an NFT art marketplace. We've been working on it for just about a year. It launched about a month ago. And I don't want to say that we had anything to do with it, but there has been like this explosion of interest in NFTs at the same time, which kind of was serendipitous for us. And we have an NFT marketplace where people can buy artwork that's created online from these art creators, from these content creators, and the NFTs give you ownership of that digital art. So right now we're only doing digital, and we're not doing physical art, but we're going to move into that. It's a little bit more of a challenge because you have to set up kind of like this line of provenance that escapes the digital world and goes into the physical world, and kind of linking those two together is difficult. Like the Oracle problem, which Chainlink is trying to solve, linking real world or exogenous data from like the wider network into just a chain. It's a really difficult problem to solve, and it's just kind of like in the early stages of us solving that right now, or the industry solving it right now. But at the moment, you have content creators come to our site, they log in, they're able to prove their identity through us. We have a centralized identity verification process. Eventually, we want to decentralize this through governance process, but that's kind of in the future. And right now, they can come in and they can create a piece of art, upload it. It goes into IPFS, which is a decentralized file sharing network. So everyone is able to view that file, retrieve the file as long as they have the hash. So hash is like a very well-known concept in the industry, but basically it is a long string of characters that proves that some data is in a file. So if you change one bit, if you change one or zero, you flip them over, the hash changes completely. So if you think about, like, if you ever use BitTorrent, you copy that really long link into your URL bar, and then you paste it into your BitTorrent client, or you get the magnet link, and it's just like this huge thing of gibberish. That's actually a hash that identifies the file that you're looking for. So BitTorrent is very similar to IPFS, where you have a decentralized network of computers that store all of the data that's on the network, and then users come and consumers come and retrieve that data by using the hash, and they look it up using the hash. So yeah, what we do is we allow content creators to upload their content to IPFS, and then they create an NFT, which stands for non-fungible token, which is essentially like if you think about Bitcoin, like 1 Bitcoin is equal to 1 Bitcoin. Or even if you think about traditional currency, an old beat up quarter from 1942, like a coin, is still worth 25 cents, even though a new shiny one from 2020 looks better and is more functional, whatever. It's fungible, so they're all worth the same amount. That's how I like to describe it. A non-fungible token is tradable, just like a fungible token like Bitcoin or any of the ERC20s on Ethereum, but it's unique. So there's only one of it. So there's a lot of things you can do with NFTs, ranging from insurance policies to representing real life real estate, even digital real estate. We've seen Decentraland, which actually Decentraland is not given enough credit for having this NFT marketplace, a decentralized NFT marketplace. So you can buy virtual reality land and real estate within Decentraland on their website. That's using like a fully Web3 compliant sort of like browser app. And I'll get a little bit into Web3 later. Everything that we're building lives on Web3. Everything that Rohit has built is considered a Web3 app. I really think it's the future. People don't even really know how to think about it right now. When I'm building a Web3 app, usually the designer is like, well, what's the back end? How does the back end work? It's not really a back end. It's just some front end code that connects to a node on your local PC that connects to other nodes. So you really don't have a concept of a back end. You really just have the concept of like locally stored data and like network participants that your local PC is connecting to, kind of like going around the backend problem. But in any case, this NFT concept that we're really focusing on is just a tradable item that is on the chain that is unique. So like I said, insurance, land, artwork is a big one, right? And that's where we've decided to focus. And with our art marketplace, we always get people asking us, why is it that like someone would pay $100 for a JPEG? Like you come on our site and you see like every time we do a drop of a new artist, it's all sold out instantly, but they're kind of expensive pieces of work. At least considering like it just looks like an image gallery, and image galleries are always free on the internet. So who's paying for these things and why, right? And the concept of value and like why does anyone pay for a Bitcoin is similar to this, right? Because it's this digital idea of the representation of money, just like the NFT is a digital idea of representation of artwork. And in our case, I would say the majority of collectors that come on our site and buy our NFTs, they're looking for the properties of the chain that are underlying the technology that's used to build the NFTs. So let me give you an example. If I create an NFT, I'm an artist, and I send you one of my pieces of work on the chain, you have a history like, oh, this is my address. It's sending you the one and only piece of work that I've created. And now you have it in your address and you're able to send it around and you have complete control over it now. That's like a provable history that your artwork came directly from me, the creator. And people who invest in things, sometimes they like to have that like provable ownership, and they like to have that provable chain of history that is authenticated and cannot be kind of deleted. And it is easy to see that, oh, due to the digital signatures, everything is legit. And that's actually a pretty big problem in the art industry. It's a pretty big problem in the ticketing industry, but we've seen it more successfully solved in the art industry. So bringing that back to like, how do people value these things? Well, on one hand, if you're following a content creator and you like their work and it adds value to your life, then you would feel proud, or you might feel incentivized to buy something from them because you feel like it adds a lot and you have a connection to that person that's a direct, provable connection that can't be taken away from you. And a lot of collectors feel that that's super important to them. A lot of other collectors just think that, speculating on the value of that based on future pieces of art that artist provides, that's going to create like an increase of value on the investment in an earlier piece of artwork. And because they're all provably from the artist, due to that cryptography that we're talking about and the way the blockchain works, you have a pretty secure investment in the way that that if that artist becomes popular and people are buying their work, then that piece of that NFT is going to be valuable just by the properties that define it. So we've really focused on that. We've had some success. It's been about a month and a half, and we're moving into this NFT protocol, which is a general NFT software package. It lives on the blockchain. It's not going to be focused on ETH. We're going to be bringing this to many different chains. Dapper Labs has the CryptoKitties chain that they're working on, which is also called Flow. Incidentally, there's a little bit of a namespace collision there, but they're Flow with the W. We're going to be expanding to Flow. We're going to be expanding to Flow FLO, and we're going to be continuing to work on ETH, probably some other chains as well as time goes on. But essentially what we want to do is two things with NFT protocol. Number one is create an NFT DEX. So Decentraland has right now the only decentralized exchange for NFTs in the world. And they're focused on their own application, which is their VR world, where you can build your own like palace or whatever you want. Actually, for Open Index Protocol, we've built a library of digital content in Decentraland. So if you go to our Open Index Protocol museum, you can look at all the stuff that we've uploaded and kind of walk around as if it's like an actual gallery, which is very cool. But other than Decentraland, there isn't an existing decentralized exchange for NFTs. ZeroX Protocol kind of tried to make one. It's defunct. It's not used anymore. It's not maintained anymore. Their GitHub is dead. And if you try to download and clone the source, it doesn't work. So we're going to be recreating this concept of a digital, a decentralized exchange for NFTs. The second thing that we're going to do is a little bit more of a boring use case, but interesting for people that are investors and speculators. We want to create an NFT price index. So when I was at Galaxy, that was around the time that Galaxy was putting out the Bloomberg Galaxy Crypto Index. And that's kind of like a way to invest in all of the top 10 cryptocurrencies based on some criteria that we set and like a weighting formula that we use to give it a final price. And that's listed on like, traditional markets. So what we're doing at NFT Protocol is similar to that idea, where you have an index of, let's say, a genre of NFTs or like a collection of NFTs. So you can have an index which represents the value of all the NFTs from one content creator. You can have an index that represents the value of all the baseball card NFTs, which those are super popular for some reason on the chain. I think the collectible concept translates really well to blockchain, actually, but that's a different story. So creating these price indexes will give people a more straightforward way to invest in NFTs and the future of NFTs, because it's more of a you get more trading volume when you have like a larger amount of things to trade, but also it requires that we kind of like go back to that Oracle problem and solve it a little bit and say, hey, what are the prices of this NFTs? What are the prices over time? How are those prices changing? And would investing in them give people, speculators, a profit or a way to make money or provide value to the market, whether it's like providing liquidity, whether it's providing like futures, which kind of gives us like an idea of where the market might be going, or whether it's just providing some sort of insight into the market research that could be kind of like, you'll see research and you'll see predictions and you'll see a lot of things like based off of the fact that you can make money on this. So it's not just like purely hey, let's get rich kind of idea. It's more like we can actually provide value to the NFT ecosystem by providing the speculative instrument, which then all the speculative instrument guys will start hiring other people that do research, and they'll start creating this economy around the index, which provides value back to the underlying assets, just in the fact that they have more attention and they're being looked at, and like it's being analyzed in a way that like a financial market would analyze regular assets. So that's what we're trying to do with NFT Protocol. That's how it started with Block Party. And there's a lot more that we're doing. I could talk about Web3 probably forever, but that's like the kind of like medium length explanation of what we're doing.
So thanks very much. The last panel member is Chris. He joins us from Investec. So over to you, Chris.
I also perhaps just wanted to add a point on NFTs for people to perhaps understand them and how they might be applied in the real world outside of art. People have spoken a lot about title deeds to homes or vehicles being recorded on the blockchain. NFTs is the form that these titles would most likely be registered and recorded in. And so that means in the future, blockchain becomes more widely used and the title to your home is registered on a blockchain, it would be registered as an NFT. And whoever holds that token in a wallet is effectively the rightful owner of that asset. And that then makes that asset interoperable with the financial system that's being built on blockchains as well. I want to give people a quick historical view. You need to understand where money's come from, how it's evolved, both the value of money, what it is. And Neil, I thought you did a great presentation on that, but I want to sort of give my own flavor to this, and maybe we can have a bit of a conversation around it. The history of money and what we've used as money, but then as money's changed, the technology of money has also changed. So I want to give a bit of an explanation to all of this. So firstly, the evolution of money. I'm going to focus on the region of Southern Africa, where the Khoisan people lived in the area today known as the Western Cape. And they primarily used as money ostrich shell beads. So this is a necklace showing a very popular form of money in the Western Cape of pre-1600s. These little shell beads are made from ostrich shells. They were often used as necklaces, so jewelry, but you could take the necklace apart and use these tiny little beads to transact with people in order to do mutually beneficial trade, in order to buy and sell goods. In the area known as KwaZulu-Natal, and even in the northern regions of Southern Africa, copper assegai spear tips were used as money. And the first form of paper money in SA was actually a silver-backed money, also in the Cape Colony, and that was known as the Rix dollar. So the money that we've used isn't always constant. It can vary a lot. Even in the area of Southern Africa where we live today, known as South Africa, very many different forms of monies existed in parallel alongside each other and effectively competed with each other. Out of interest, the first central bank in Southern Africa was known as the Lombard Bank, and they were basically given the mandate to manage this Rix dollar that you see on the screen. Out of interest, these Rix dollars were all handwritten because up until 1802, I believe, because there were no printing presses down here. So the technology of the printing press only arrived in the sort of around 1817, I think. Before that, everything was handwritten. In the 1800s, moving further in the 1800s, the gold standard became wildly popular around the world. It was the dominant currency of the globe. And what we saw in Southern Africa, after the Rix dollar effectively became less used, is that gold was the predominant form of money. And there were 32 private banks in Southern Africa that all issued their own private banknotes. And these banknotes were a representation of gold that sat in that bank's vault. This is an example of one such banknote. The money was called a pound, but the pound was equal to 7.3 grams of gold or 113.1 grams of silver. So the definition of the pound sterling, was these weights of precious metal specie. That was the common denominator to all of those banknotes that were in circulation at the time. There was no central bank back then. And with that, I'm going to go and talk about the Rand and when the Rand was born and how it came into being. So the gold standard was the dominant form of gold was money in the 1800s and coming into the early 1900s. And the South African Reserve Bank, this is the first building of the South African Reserve Bank in Pretoria. It was launched in 1921, and the South African Reserve Bank was created in the wake of the First World War, where gold was leaving South Africa to London, and it was creating instability in our financial system. The SARB was created to stabilize the system and prevent the outflow of gold from causing solvency crises in domestic banks. For the first 20 years of the SARB's 40 years, of the SARB's existence, it managed a pound standard. The rand didn't exist yet. The rand was first created in 1961. So South Africa used pounds, and the South African Reserve Bank basically managed a banking system that operated on a pound standard. So one can say that the SARB managed a foreign monetary standard for the first 40 years of its existence. And so this is an example of one such banknote. That was a pound banknote issued by the South African Reserve Bank. The first rand was created in 1961, and that's an example of a paper banknote rand. For 10 years after 1961, the rand was indirectly backed by gold. But that ended in 1971, which I'll talk about in a moment. But what was very interesting in the lead up to introducing the first rand is that from 1958 to 1961, the government of the day had to run campaigns to introduce the concept of a decimal currency that would move from a pound, which was pounds, shillings, and pennies, to a rand decimal system. And people can go and Google Decimal Dan, the Rand Cent Man, which was a jingle that was played on the radio to explain the concept of this rand and how the decimal rand system, meaning 1 rand is equal to 100 cents, would change the way that they transact. Interestingly, after the first rand was introduced, many stores, in fact, most stores, ran 2 prices or listed 2 prices on store shelves alongside each other so people could become familiar with the new currency. In 1971, something big happened in the world of money, where this is President Richard Nixon of America, was experiencing a run on its gold reserves by the French predominantly. The French were going to America and taking its gold out of the Federal Reserve, which is America's central bank. And the President Nixon, American President Nixon, in 1971, had to stop that because it threatened to basically destabilize their financial system. So this is a picture of the news, sort of the announcement that President Richard Nixon made in 1971, ending the dollar's link to gold. When President Nixon did that, it meant that the rest of the world also went onto what is known as a fiat or free-floating currency regime, where no real money, if I can put it that way, no asset actually backs the money. The money would be, from then on, predominantly a liability on a central bank's balance sheet, which meant that there was sovereign risk attached to currencies, but not precious metals or money specie. So the nature of the money changed dramatically in 1971. But another big development happened in 1971, and that was that Intel produced the first microprocessor, the Intel 4004 microprocessor chip. And what this meant was the world became increasingly digital because this microprocessor could run multiple processors on it. So you could start having the type of computing that we're all familiar with today. So one computer could run multiple operations simultaneously with the use of these chips. And it meant that the world became increasingly digital. And when you look at the rand today, 96% of all rands in existence is digital. Only 4% of all rands outstanding is physical coin and banknotes. So as we've increasingly used computers over the last few decades, the rand's becoming increasingly digital. All of this talk about digital central bank currencies to a large extent, is missing the point because currencies are mostly digital already. The conversation is more just around how do you build more robust, decentralized networks that you can transact through. So point is, Rand is mostly digital. In fact, 99% of all Rands in the public's hands, in other words, outside of the central bank and outside of banks, is digital. So with that, a quick walkthrough of the evolution of monetary technology. So as I've said, we've moved from gold coins as money to these paper banknotes, which were a claim on gold as money. So the banknote was, if you had it, it was like a certificate. When you go to a bar and you leave your coat with the person at the front desk, you get a ticket. That ticket proves that you're the owner of that coat. These banknotes were the same concept. It was a credit instrument. Then in 1971, the link to the actual asset backing that credit instrument was removed. And now today, money is mostly electronic. It's ones and zeros and on bank computer databases. So we've moved from the money, gold, banknotes, electronic. The concept of banking, however, has been very consistent. Banks, in the days of gold, were custodians of gold. They had bank vaults into which you had to securely store the gold. Banks today are basically the same thing. They just do this electronically. So banks are mostly data centers today because most of the money is electronic. The concept of payments, if you look at 16, 17, 1800s America, for example, this is a picture of Wells Fargo's logo, the stagecoach of Wells Fargo. It was a payments business primarily because it was a courier business. In order to make a payment with gold or banknotes, you had to physically ship those items from one person to another person. American Express was a courier company just like Wells Fargo was, and used to ship money, physical money, from the east to the west coast and back again. That's what a payments business was. That's what a payments business looks like today in the world of physical money. We don't see too many of these because most of the money is electronic. But as the point I'm trying to make is, as money's become electronic, ones and zeros in computer databases and spreadsheets, banks are data centers, and what payments are, Visa, MasterCard, BankServe, are messaging companies. They send messages between these data centers. We obviously use electronic devices to submit these messages. So, history of the Rand, currencies used in South Africa, change in the technology, conceptually, fundamentally, it's just gone from physical shipments to electronic shipments and couriers. And so what's the point of blockchain? Like, where does blockchain fit in? And this is where I'm basically going to end this presentation.
Excellent, thanks. I think we can all agree there's a lot going on in the space. I think Joseph said it best when it's kind of this pipe of flowing water and it's just getting bigger and bigger, and to kind of make sense of all of it is very difficult. I think the world is moving so quickly. The new news articles all the time coming out. PayPal's adopting Bitcoin. Kraken is the first Bitcoin bank in the world. Banks are nervous, but they shouldn't be nervous because there's still people that need a banking centralized system. I think that banks have been rather open to adopting this technology, which is always good. I think when you start calling out a technology and kind of trying to stop it, that's when it becomes more disruptive. So I think there's a lot to be done in the space. That's it for this webinar at the CSIR. And I hope to hear from everyone again. I'm sure we'll be in contact, and then we'll also see what kind of questions come back. Thanks again.